Brendan, firstly, I want to take this opportunity to thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule, I'm sure, and to come onto the podcast and talk. It's an interesting topic I've been wanting to cover for some time now. It's all about this whole social media creators, influencers. What does this all mean, especially for the hunting industry? But where I really got intrigued with your journey specifically was the whole fight you're having at the moment with TikTok. But I'm sure we'll get into that.
Yeah.
But firstly, before we do, just everyone back home or listening to this, what has got you into social media? I know you're an entrepreneur in this market, so tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so I mean, I have a background as a child. I grew up on a hunting farm, actually. So I come from a farming, hunting background. So, I'm no stranger to the bush and wildlife in South Africa. My father was also a nature conservation officer for many years. And being a 90s, early 90s kid, we grew up on that transition period between, old technology and then cell phones coming around and cameras getting better. So I think my upbringing was very much an introduction into what we see now in terms of technology and social media. And so I was actually quite late to the social media party back in high school. And it wasn't really something that ever interested me. I was very interested in photography and film and stuff like that. And then when I got to varsity, I went and studied animal science. So yeah, I studied animal science, and then the first job that I ever had working as an animal scientist was for a company, and one of the major things that I had to handle for the company was their material, their marketing material, because we were bringing in products from overseas, and I had to obviously get training on those products. I had to understand how to market and sell them here in South Africa because I was a rep, and it was sort of a bridge between an industry, which was the feed industry, the animal feed industry in South Africa. And on the other side, I had to sort of understand marketing and advertising. And at that point, I had actually been doing a lot of videography for another PH that I was friends with. So he used to sort of sell us as a package deal where, he'd have hunters come from overseas and then we'd go and shoot like a giraffe or something like that. And then I would be the videographer and the photographer for the trip for the day. So I just always sort of found myself falling into that space where it was something to do with videography or photography. So I did a lot of photography as a side gig, doing like model shoots and stuff like that. And then yeah, when I left that industry, I sort of found myself in the social media space quite quickly. And I think the thing that interests or intrigues me the most about it is that it's a very fast-paced industry. A trend lasts a day or two and then it's gone. And just understanding how people work, it's very easy to see what people are gravitating towards in a specific industry just by looking at the way that the social media and um, the online presence of that industry is portrayed to the rest of the world in general. So I love working within the industry and specific clients and then having a look to see and going like, okay, you guys have been doing it a certain way up until now, but we can adapt it to fit the industry still, but maybe make you stand out a little bit more because there's always something that you can improve. There's always something that you can add. So yeah, it's kind of just how I found myself in it.
But I wanted to. So, I've been juggling this. I hate the word influencer, and partly for the reason is that I don't want to influence anyone into buying anything or purchasing a package or whatever the case may be. So I
Mm.
enjoy the word creator, and I know you use that word quite a bit. Can you explain to us, just on a basic term, what is a creator or an influencer in the social media game?
So I get where you're coming from. There's a lot of people that don't, even I don't like the word influencer. I think it's a very cliche word. But the fact is that we all need to understand that in some way, all of us are influencers. You know, an influencer, a salesperson, a marketer, a content creator, they're all pretty much the same person. I mean, you as a PH, you're an influencer within your immediate circle. You know, the people that hang around you, your friends and family, you influence them in some way with regards to your industry and the way that you like doing things, or the guns that you prefer hunting with, or whatever the case might be. So we all kind of have to get over that desire to not be labeled an influencer, because in some way we all influence people around us. It's just that once you get onto a platform, or once you get onto a thing like social media, um, that kind of becomes a lot bigger. Your ability to influence just becomes a lot bigger. And for some people, it takes a long time to get there. I mean, take me, for example, my Instagram. I wouldn't consider myself an influencer on Instagram, because it's basically just people I know. I've got a very small following, whereas on TikTok, I have an order of magnitude much larger following. So there, I would consider myself to have a certain level of influence, and it also looks different for everybody. So yeah, getting into it, you kind of just got to pick what it is that you enjoy doing, or the things that you gravitate towards. And once you start creating that content, and content creation looks very different depending on what your idea of content creation is. So a lot of people will look at platforms like YouTube or professional content creators, and by that, those are just guys that have been around the industry for years and years and years. I remember Mr. Beast once he was in an interview, and someone asked him something. I can't remember what the exact question was, but he kind of turned around and said, "Come back to me once you've made 1,000 videos, and then we can talk about that." So the biggest thing is volume. These days, it really doesn't matter so much about the quality, and a lot of the things that people worry about that sort of prevents them from becoming content creators. A content creator can be somebody, me, sitting at my coffee table there with my phone, just turning, the front camera, facing it at me. I always say to people, go sit in your car. It's a perfectly soundproofed little environment.
Yeah.
You can think in there, turn your camera, face it towards yourself, share something. Or maybe it's you before a hunt or after a hunt, or maybe something has happened in the hunting industry. I remember when there was a huge shortage of bullets back in the day because one of the powder factories burnt down or something like that. There is so many different thoughts and opinions that you can share about that kind of stuff, that it's very easy to actually create content. So content is not actually the stumbling block. It's just people not understanding that you don't have to worry about this quality thing all the time.
Mm.
It's more just about how quickly you can get it out there and how much. I always say to people, if you post 2 to 3 times a day, every day on TikTok for a year, you'll get 100,000 followers. Easy. So,
Brendan,
it really comes down to just what you want to create. It's your opinion. So,
you, I have so many questions to ask you, but you keep answering them as you go along, which is awesome
yeah.
because I mean I think you're just so knowledgeable in this field. And so, but one of my biggest let's call it conflict of interest, or conflicts I have with doing a podcast and stuff like that. The other day I did a podcast on a gentleman. So in my podcast it's hunting related, but also it's it's part of my personal journey. So I broke away a little bit from it, and I called the segment Beyond the Camera, Beyond the Hunting Points, you know. And I had a gentleman on there that
Yeah.
had Pompe disease, and he was a very influential, and that podcast specifically is doing exceptionally well. But at what point
Mm.
is there a line that drives you? If you're industry based, do you have to focus on
Yeah.
that, or are people just purely invested in you, in your life, in your story? I think a lot of the time the guys get so conflicted with that, because often I'll have conversations with young professional hunters, and I'll just say, you know what, but become that person that people are interested in, regardless what you. I mean, even if you post a
Yeah.
video of you riding your bicycle, if you're passionate about riding bicycles and hunting, why there should be a space for both of that. Is that something that is possible as a content or influencer, whatever? Can we just share our story no matter what it is?
So you sort of touched on it a little bit further back in your question, and you know, so the way that I would always recommend people to start out, especially if it's something like a podcast or TikTok or something like that, is, and again, it's another stumbling block. People will sit there and they'll break their brains over trying to figure out what niche they want to get into. Now, for someone like you, it's pretty easy. You're passionate about hunting. That's already a pretty unique, it's a smaller industry. There's not a lot of people creating content in that industry, although there are, but it doesn't have the same footprint as, let's say, for example, the makeup industry in South Africa or even globally. So you'll sit there and you'll give yourself a headache trying to like think, okay, because what happens is the moment someone like you, for example, I'll take you as an example, you'll sit there and you'll go, okay, I need to create content and a podcast and that on hunting because that's what you love, it's your industry. So you'll think, okay, cool, I'm going to choose hunting. Then the moment you choose hunting, you're going to sit there and you're going to go, oh, okay, but what about hunting? And every time you focus in on a niche, you realize that there's sub niches within that niche. Then you can't decide which of those sub niches you want to focus on. And then once you focus on, let's say, for example, okay, I want to do hunting. And then you say, okay, I want to do big game hunting. And then you go, oh, okay, but now do I focus on this big game or that big game? And then when you get into that, you go, oh, but now do I focus on foot hunting only or open sight so every time you go in, you realize that there's another level below that, and it just becomes harder and harder and harder because you want to make a video or do something regarding this specific thing, but then you realize that the mountain that you're trying to climb is so much bigger because it's so, specific every time you focus in. So what I always recommend people do is I always recommend when you start out as yourself. So you're JP, whatever, or hunting or journals or PH or whatever the case might be. So you focus in on yourself. And once you have people drawn towards you and your specific way of doing things, like I can't really say that I've found a niche yet. There are definitely things that I talk on that people prefer listening to me talk on. And, this is one of those things because it's an industry that I'm in. But initially, I was just sort of firing in every direction. And the sort of the way that I looked at it was I'm a South African. I'm going to just create content as a South African. So I'm just going to fly the flag high proudly in all of my content. And I'm just going to say, okay, it's lucky to be a South African. He has content regarding South Africa, and South Africans will gravitate towards it. And that's exactly what happened. Now, if I really want a video to, do well, or I want to focus on a specific topic, I know that I can because I understand that that's something that my audience wants to listen to. So, if I were you and you were doing a podcast, I would say, start the way that Joe Rogan did when he started back in the day. He started as him, sort of as himself. And he's now sort of like gotten to a space where he can sort of have anybody come on and they can speak into any industry or any on any topic. And people will firstly watch it because it's Joe Rogan, and secondly watch it because it's whoever he's talking to. So then it creates a niche that specific people might want to listen to. So he always wins because if people want to watch just because it's him, they'll watch just because it's him, or they'll watch because they're specifically interested in that topic that they're covering. So I would always just recommend start as wide as you can, and at some point after a couple hundred videos or whatever, you will find that there's a specific thing that people prefer listening to you, watching you talk about.
Do you think content creation or influencer status is for everyone? Anyone can be it, or do you think there's just a small group of individuals that are out there that are capable of building an audience and stuff?
No, I think anybody can do it. I come across people daily where I think to like I look, I see their content and I wouldn't watch it. I'm like, I can't watch this. Um, or I look at it and I just think to myself, there is zero videographic excellence in this. The sound quality is a load of nonsense. They're talking about nonsense or whatever the case is. And I see it and then I see that they've got 500,000 or 1 million followers.
Yeah.
People are hanging on every word they say. Um, and yeah, it's not it. I think it's not for everyone. Not everyone is made to stand in front of a camera and talk and share, their opinion or whatever the case might be. But you'll find you'll find that if you just do it anyway, there's always going to be. I always say that 99% of people that start social media, if you do it properly, especially on a platform like TikTok, anyone can have a following of 20,000 people. Anyone, literally anybody. I mean, there was that guy who used to walk around opening taps in the city to see if there was water, and
Yeah.
then if there was water, he'd be happy. There's almost no value except for the fact that he's happy that, and he's finding these taps that have water in them. So anyone can do it, and anyone can have a following, anyone can have an audience. You just got to get over that mindset.
So I mean, but that leaves us for like an very so important responsibility that we have, because I mean, if you are going to want to play that game of being an influencer and influence people in a very
Yeah,
healthy and promotive and motivational way, I mean, you can't go and chow magic mushrooms and walk around the town and open all the
yeah,
taps up and
yeah.
get stoked about it. But so my next question, and I'm building up into the side where I ask you all about the financial side of things. But my next question is that is there a difference between you as an individual creator and a content creator, or do you believe that somebody should actually want to start a personal brand for? I've always just felt starting a personal brand and being able to utilize that as a content creator and stuff, it opens so many different doors from a financial point of view. Is that something somebody should be looking into?
Um, I would say that again, it's the same as trying to figure out what niche to get into. If you try and focus on too many of the before getting into it aspects of content creation and becoming an influencer, you kind of building up a brick wall that you have to climb over before you even started. So you already have a unique personal brand. Everyone is unique in their own way. So everyone has a personal brand already. Some people's are more refined than other people's, but you can always refine it as you go along. And it's always going to change as you uh, adapt to this journey that you've started. Your personal brand will adapt with it. So unless you're in the fortunate position to have a very strong personal brand already, to have already been, for example, let's say someone who's um, come from a fortunate background to be in modeling, and you've got a lot of, photo content, you've got a very nicely laid out Instagram account, you maybe have a bit of a following there already, or you're already sponsored in some way because, let's say, for example, you were a sharpshooter in school or something and you were sponsored. And, so unless you already have a personal brand that's centered around like your talent, for example, I used to be in, I used to shoot, I used to do archery for tucks, for example. And I mean, those guys, they're professional archers. They already have a very strong personal brand. They're sponsored by Hoyt or whoever it might be. They have the clothing, they have everything. So if you want to look at it like that, then yes, you can start with a personal brand and you can create content around that. And then your content is going to be very centered around that personal brand and your sponsorships and stuff like that. So you can start there, but if you don't have that, it doesn't need to stop you from getting into it. And your personal brand will develop once you're in that space.
It's I actually never thought of it like that, but it makes complete sense. It's just yeah, I think with the personal brand, it became more of an identity crisis. Like you said, like, you've got to build it up as you go along, which makes perfect sense now that I
Yeah.
look at it, and it's a great way of seeing things. So yeah, but Brendan, another thing is that, and you touched on it now with sponsorships and stuff. Especially, I've been on a personal mission, and essentially that's why PH Journals kind of started, was to promote
Mm.
conservation and hunting in an ethical and moral way, and it kind of transgressed into a space where, as a professional hunter, I wanted to figure out of season, how could professional hunters make a sustainable living, and because we
Yeah.
out there from April until late September, we're generating content almost on a daily basis, because we're out there in the bush, we're taking photos of the
Yeah.
animals that are getting shot, we're taking photos of sunsets, we're taking videos of guys getting ready to shoot, or whatever the case may be. And I wanted to try and see if there was a way for us to shift that into a monetization point. But I'm
Mm.
finding it very, very difficult. And this is where I was very intrigued with the way you approached the whole TikTok and the Creator Fund debacle.
Mm.
Is there a space in South Africa as content creators? And I might be talking niche specific now, because if you talk to a makeup artist or whatever, it's completely different. But is
Mm.
there a possible way of us monetizing what we are doing? Because it takes a lot of money, a lot of time to put in all this effort to create content.
Yeah.
Can we turn that into a monetization opportunity?
So would you like me to specifically focus my answer in on the PH hunting industry? Because I have a lot to say about making money in that industry. I can be very specific for you if you want me to be.
I think let's try and be specific. Like, I'm interested to hear.
So, so, so firstly, I'd just like to reverse all the way back. I come from a hunting and farming background. I come from a conservation background as well, and I studied animal science at Tux. So I think I've got a very broad understanding of all the industries, farming, conservation, and hunting. And South Africa is a very unique country because our those three spaces, if you want to call them that, are very large. We have, as a country, let's say our wildlife, for example, there's no other continent or country in the world that has the level of wildlife that we have, and also the size of wildlife. We have a lot of big animals in South Africa. So from a conservation and game viewing perspective, South Africa offers a lot in Kruger National Park, or any of the national parks that we have in South Africa, and even the private game farms as well, and private lodges that offer game viewing and conservation. And from a hunting perspective, we offer more than any other country in the world. I mean, every hunter wants to come to South Africa during the hunting season to come and hunt here in South Africa. So in that regard, we're very fortunate on all levels in all three of those spaces. And I've always maintained, I wrote my thesis on the Big Five as a conservation concept in South Africa, for my honors. And, at the time I was also hunting. So I had a very unique, sort of perspective on the whole thing. And I've always maintained that if those industries can start seeing eye to eye, everyone that is within the nature space in South Africa will actually benefit a lot more from each other and will actually be able to achieve their goals a lot better. So if the hunters and the conservationists could see eye to eye, then both sides of the fence could actually win, because whether you like it or not, for the conservationists, they need to remember that the moment you put a fence up around something, even if it's a land as big or a piece of land as big as Kruger National Park, the animals can't migrate anymore. So once they can't migrate anymore, or they can't move out of an area as easily as what they used to be able to, you now need to play demigod essentially. You have to do fire breaks, control the population, make sure that your stocking rates are up to, scratch. So you have to manage your land, especially if you have a small piece of land like 2,000 hectares or something like that, which is what most of the farms, most of the hunting farms in Bella Bella, Tabazimbi, all those
Mm.
areas have. So those guys are essentially playing conservation officer and hunter. For the hunting season, they've got their guests coming in, they're doing hunting, and then for the rest of the year, they're trying to maintain the farm, they're trying to bush clear, they're trying to do everything that they can to make sure that the farm is healthy and that the bushveld is healthy. So I've always said if the two can see eye to eye, then because hunters especially overseas hunters, they're willing to pay a lot to come and hunt in South Africa. So that money comes back into South Africa. It can come back into conservation efforts. So if you want to look at it from a monetization perspective, especially for hunters, yes, you are focusing most of your efforts into making money during the hunting season, which is where the majority of your cash flow is going to come from. And that is physical hard grinding. You've got to either go overseas or go to Huntex, or advertise yourself in some way, whether it's through social media, or maybe you've got a chummy over in the United States that's doing some kind of word of mouth for you. Or I know that you guys have all got different ways of getting your
Yeah.
packages out there and everything. I think there's even donation hunts that people do on auctions. And so there's you guys have got your traditional standard ways of putting yourselves out there and generating money. I think something like a podcast, and content creation is a brilliant way to bridge that gap. And that gap is the gap between your hunting season and your non-hunting season. And I would always say if a PH can become a tour guide in Kruger or whatever during the off season, that would be a brilliant way for you to say, I stand for hunting and maintaining healthy animal populations in fenced off reserves or whatever the case is, or hunting farms. And also, I stand for conservation efforts, game walks, whatever the case might be. And I think that the PHs that can nail that balance going forward and have outfitters or companies that do that effectively are the guys that are going to win in the long term, because you have to bridge that gap. And if you have something like a podcast, for example, you can have your hunters come over here. You can do a post-hunt podcast with them. You can do it on the farm, on site, and you can just talk to them about their experience. And then once that starts going, you can even then get into a personal brand and maybe have, for example, a hunting clothing apparel line. And you can have stuff that you found has worked best for you and your version of it, whether it be binocular bags or hunting jackets or whatever the case is, you can have that as now as another thing on top of it, and you can use everything all together. and then you tie in some TikTok content as well, because like you say, when you're in the hunting season, you're generating an astronomical amount of content. I would just be putting the content out there all the time. And in between the hunting content, put some conservation stuff. If you're a PH and you have to join forces with a conservation effort, then go for it. Do it. Say, that I'm a PH, this is my hunting outfitter, or this is whatever we do, this is the animals that we hunt during the hunting season, but here's the conservation effort that we stand for. We help take snares out on our off days, or we support pangolin, and that those are the conservation efforts that actually need to be focused on, not the big five stuff, because the big five, they steal all the money and none of it filters down to the smaller stuff, the rhino beetles and the pangolins and all of that, and those animals get left to essentially fend for themselves in the conservation space. Yet those are all the things that you sort of come across on foot when you guys are out hunting. So yeah, I have a lot to say about it, but I think the hunting conservation space is a space that if you can sort of tie the two together effectively, you have so much that you can do there to generate an income and to also help the industry become better over time.
And you don't think there's a way for us to monetize through sponsorship and stuff like that? Because one
Definitely.
thing I've tried, I've been very fortunate. I've experienced both worlds, right? So I've experienced the side in America and then
Yeah.
back home here. And I'll openly admit it's a lot harder for us to get. And when I say sponsorship, I mean, I don't mean a handout, a new gun, or a new pair of binoculars, or
Yeah.
anything like that. Just to become brand associated with.
Yeah.
In America, their openness to do business with content creators in the field, because essentially what happens is like you look at some of the big names in the hunting industry, Remy Warren and all the, they've landed these
Yeah.
lucrative deals. Not only do they get great equipment, but it helps them because it's expensive. I mean, it's expensive to run content. It's expensive to have good camera equipment, GoPros, drones, and all that sort of stuff. But in
Yeah.
South Africa, I do have a suspicious feeling that it's a lot more difficult for us to break the mold. Yeah. Do you think that's a lack of individuals in the industry not wanting to see the bigger picture, or where this could be going? Or are we just light years behind the Americans when it comes to sponsorship and understanding the
Yeah.
effectiveness of content creating?
So I have this conversation every time I get into a meeting with clients. So we as South Africans, we see what goes on overseas. So I'll take the hunting industry overseas. You're correct in saying those guys they've got sponsorships coming out their ears over there, and they've got some of the most incredible documentary series that I watch on Netflix, and Meat Eater, and like all these you see the content that they're creating, and and the sponsorships that they have, and some of them have even got their own brand of knives and their own brand of this, and they've got their own signature series of rifles made by some, you know, rifle maker, or they've got like these incredible brand deals that they're dealing with. And so we see that now. If I had to go and sit, so let's just take a off the shelf hunter slash content creator in the United States, take them off the shelf, put them down in front of me. I'll have a conversation with them. The first thing I'll ask them is, or I'll say to them, maybe you're not, they'll say to me, I feel like I'm not getting enough exposure. I feel like I'm not reaching enough people, or whatever their issue might be. And I'll say to them, okay, well, how many times are you posting a day? And they'll go, I'm maybe posting about 2, 3 times a day, but I don't think it's enough. And I'll go like, what? 2, 3 times a day. Okay, maybe add one more video to your repertoire per day. I don't know, like get ready with me in the morning. Whereas here in South Africa, so I was at a farm in Tabazimbi this weekend, a hunting farm, just up on the Botswana border. We went to go and do a hunting apparel shoot. And the owners of the farm, they figured out that I was this social media guru by their words, they understand it. And they started picking my ear for things that they could do. And they showed me their social media, their Instagram, everything. And I said to them, okay, well, do you have TikTok? No. Are you posting one to two, three times a day or once a day every week? No. Do you have this in place? No. Do you understand that about social media? No. Then they'll maybe ask me, okay, well, what are hashtags? And I'm like, so the biggest issue that we have, and it's nothing against them, they're fantastic people, it's a beautiful farm, it has so much potential. Yes, I can help them. But, I said to them when they were busy asking me all these things, what they should do, should they get their website redone and all of that, I said, no. Your husband goes for barefoot walks in the afternoon. They wanted to start the series where they asked me if it was a good idea, where he goes for the walks with the dogs. They've got 3 wireheads and 1 GSP, and he goes for a walk in the afternoon barefoot on the dirt road. And I said, that is a brilliant, just make one of those videos every day, put it out there because there's very few people that have I can't do that here. If I go for a walk here, I'm walking on tar road. And I'm in the city. So I can't make that video. So he can make that video and people will watch it because people will always watch what they don't have. They'll always gravitate towards what they don't have. So when you make content on social media, you essentially filling a gap that people have in their life. So when it comes to brand deals and sponsorships and all these things that we see the guys in the United States having, the reason why we can't get them here in South Africa is because we're not offering enough to those brands in terms of coverage. Because brands are only going to sponsor you if they know that there's a guarantee that they will be covered in some way through the content that you're creating. So you have to have everything that you need to be doing everything that you possibly can. If you're a PH or a hunter or whatever, you need a podcast, you need TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn. You need to be doing everything and you need to be shooting content daily. Even if you're not hunting, go for a walk, take your dogs for something, do a video of your dog going to the vet. It doesn't matter. Just do it. Make sure that your vehicle's in every shot. Make sure that just make content and just keep making content and share your opinion and share tips because that's another thing that your industry, a lot of the guys overseas, they show the stuff that they're doing. They show the things that they come up with. Oh, this is something I realized works better for me when I'm sitting in a deer hide 10 feet up in the tree kind of vibes. And this is better than this. So that is the biggest problem with South Africans. End of story. It's just that we don't create enough content for the brands to justify giving us those brand deals.
But do you think that's only from a content point of view from us as content creators, or do you think it's from companies as well? Like there was a friend of mine, Wayne Dell, who landed a flippin' awesome deal with binoculars. It's called Vector Optics or whatever it is, and
Mm.
I looked at this and I was like, shit, this is such a massive step in the right direction for the professional hunting industry as a whole. Because if we've got brands like this wanting to come on board and wanting to embrace and sponsor professional hunters out there. But we're talking about a Chinese company now that's wanting to invest
Mm.
into us as professional hunters. But if I look
Yeah.
locally, and there's been a couple of guys that I've reached out to because I'm not saying I always want a handout. I'm saying I want to associate myself with your brand because together
Mm.
the two brands might generate this stronger impression, right? But do you think,
Yeah.
getting back to my point, what I was trying to say is that do you think it's not only us as content creators that are dropping the ball? Do you think it's partly also some of the brands that are based in South Africa that aren't quite, maybe not confident in us being able to deliver the goods?
Yeah. So at the end of the day, the industry is very small here in South Africa compared to the industry in the States. I mean, it that you if you go to the States, you just have to walk into a Bass Pro Shop to realize how much bigger their outdoor industry is than ours. It's ginormous compared to us. We don't even make a drop in the ocean for them. So in terms of the world standard, South Africa, yes, we have a lot to offer in terms of hunting and game and the industry, but it's still very small. So for brands, the big problem is they don't see and understand that there is potential, because that potential is not being utilized from either side. So the hunters and the creators in your space, there's very few of you that are willing to do something like a podcast, and do other stuff that's not necessarily related to picking a gun up and going and shooting something in the bush. So that's the first problem. But the second problem is that when it comes to brand deals and trying to land brand deals, or associating yourself with those brand deals, the brands in South Africa, again, it's a huge problem that we have, where all of the companies and the owners of companies and the CEOs and everything, they binge watch American content like we all do. So the thought process, or the thinking behind what we should be achieving is based on that, which is totally unfair on creators in South Africa, because we know we're close to that. But when you're trying to negotiate a brand deal or a sponsorship or something like that, there's always going to be two or three things that the brand is going to be uncertain of with regards to you as a potential brand deal. Whether you approached them or whether they approached you is irrespective, but there's always going to be one or two things that they're going to be uncertain of. So they're going to say to you, okay, we don't like the fact that you have a beard and that you wear this brand of clothing. And then the other thing that they're going to have a problem with is that you don't have enough coverage in terms of social media. Now, if the problems that they have are specifically just fixable things, like you trim your beard and maybe you don't swear as much or something like that on camera, whatever that might be, that's an easy fix. But if one of the problems is also the fact that you don't have enough media coverage, that's a very big one. And it's a very difficult one to fix. So that's why I say it's better to approach this from a perspective of, I'm creating content, I'm putting it out there as much as I can. That's not a problem. Then when you approach brands, or you have brands from overseas, and I say, you know what, if you're in South Africa and the South African industry doesn't want to support the local guys, fine. Send everything. Get overseas brands to come in. Approach the Chinese. They'll happily send as much as they
Yeah.
want, because for them it's cheap. So I think that's where, and what will happen is the South African brands and companies and the guys here in South Africa, they'll start realizing, oh heck, we're missing out on a lot here. Maybe let's also play the game. So as a content creator, and that's one thing, that's why it's called an influencer. If a specific industry is not responding to you in a specific space as an influencer locally, it's fine. Go and find an overseas one. I promise you, the local guys will go, whoa, hold on, hold on, hold on. We're here, we're here, we're here.
So, well, you touched on it. Not enough traction. What is the ideal amount? Well, I suppose there's never an ideal, but what is enough? Well, I mean, I I'll be honest with you. I can never figure out the social media thing, and I've watched. You always watch those YouTube episodes of grow your Instagram following with 10 easy clicks, and the algorithms change to this. But Brendan, I've never figured it out. My Instagram has got just shy of 30,000. my podcast goes and sparks the 1 year, and I get over 2.5 million downloads. And then my YouTube channel stays stagnant for a couple of years. So I've never really figured out. There's never been a consistency. But if we look at it from a broader perception, and we look in, what is the ideal amount of following or traction or something one should have or consider?
So there is no, ideally all of us would want 1.5 million followers, or, you know, some ridiculous number. We all want that. But I'd say, like, if you already have 30,000 on Instagram is a very big number especially for someone in your space. So 30,000, you're already winning there. TikTok, I think you've got 20
20
something.
something, yeah.
You're already winning there. Like, so I mean, for your space, because remember, you are a slightly more niche creator. So you're already winning in terms of numbers, and you mustn't worry about the ups and downs on the specific platforms, because people will always move with the platforms. Like, something happens on TikTok, like we had with the ban, then people will not be so certain about that platform. Then they'll sort of shift somewhere else, and then they'll come back. So you, as a creator, you mustn't worry about chasing where people are. You must just worry about putting content out on your platforms. There is no maximum number. There's no such thing. The more, the better. But I would say that ideally you would want to be posting at least once a day across all your platforms. So if you can put one video on TikTok, take that same video, put it on Instagram, maybe put a photo on Instagram as well. YouTube is obviously a little bit more difficult because YouTube is a larger format video. So if you can put out one video a week, or maybe 1 to 2 videos a month, especially in your peak season hunting, then go for it. If you have a podcast, you should be able to post one podcast episode a week. Um, and you want to just kind of be consistent in some way. You don't have to post it at exactly the same time every single day, every day of the week. Play around with the times and everything, because a lot of people try and go, oh, I'm not going to get the same views if I don't post it at exactly 3 minutes past 6 in the morning on a Thursday, and 5 minutes past 7 on a Friday. And if you try and chase stuff like that, you're going to be very disappointed. You're going to be very frustrated. Just post it. Don't worry about it. I always say that if it's good content, you'll get the views that you deserve for it, especially if you're being consistent in terms of posting every day. A lot of people will come to me, or I'll see people posting videos saying, "Oh, I'm not getting the views. I'm not, or the 200 jail, the 200 view jail." There's no 200 view jail. It's just that your content is cuck. You cuck.
Yeah.
And that's just, not every video is great. Sometimes you just miss the mark. Sometimes it's the wrong topic at the wrong time. People are not interested in listening to that. They're not going to listen to it. They're going to scroll past your video. And if you've just started out, no platform is just going to say, "Oh, yay, another person, let me push their stuff out to the rest of the world." No, you need to remember that the platform does operate on an algorithm. It does have specific ways in which it first watches you to make sure that you're not a bot, you're not posting nonsense. Your videos are going to get reviewed a couple times. Once they see that you're okay, then they move you into the okay folder, or whatever it is that they do, and then your content will start doing better. But you've just got to keep going. It's all about
Yeah.
consistency and just post. If you can post once a day, that's great. If you can post 3 times a day, that's better. If you can post 10 times a day, well,
It's the golden period that. But I know you've created, and I definitely want to dive into that. But before we do, because I know you've created a platform that's. I mean, I played a little bit around with it last night, and I thought, yes, it's such an
I saw you
exceptional,
signed up.
um,
I saw you signed up.
such a cool platform and stuff.
Thank
It's
you.
just I'm having issues with linking my Facebook and my Instagram account, but we will chat about that. But
Okay.
my going back to the monetization side of things, you've pointed out something to me that I was never. I didn't even know we had a TikTok creator fund, and
Well,
only
we don't.
recently have.
Yeah, we
Yeah,
don't.
well, but in I didn't even know there was
Globally.
one to start it off.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you often you look around at your different analytics, and go into Facebook, and there's the whole monetization option. Instagram's the same thing, and then
Yeah.
I was very intrigued. Is we? I mean, you fighting the battle for us now, trying to get them to give us a TikTok creator fund. But is
Mm.
that an avenue that we could maybe look at? I mean, especially with the gifts. I didn't even know they took, what was it, 40% of the gifts that you get on a live or something like that.
That's why I don't, in terms of the way, so TikTok, in the same way, YouTube has a creator fund. You can monetize yourself and you can get paid for your views. There's no other way to pay someone on YouTube. You can't leave a person a tip or whatever. You can subscribe, but a subscription doesn't cost anything. There is no other way for you to give people money, other than people having, let's say, a link for their affiliated products. Then
Yeah.
when you click that link and you go to an Amazon store, whatever, then you purchase that gun bag or whatever it might be. They then get a affiliate cut for that. But that's their own, they're doing that themselves and they found a different way of making money. Instagram as well. There's no way of tipping people. The thing that I hate about the way that TikTok has set up their general, so let's say, for example, if you look on a global level, every country in the world has access to the majority of features on TikTok when it comes to making money. Then you've only got, so it's Brazil, America, then Germany, France, Italy, Spain, South Korea, and Japan. Those are, and the UK. Those are the only countries in the world that have access to what YouTube also gives everybody, which is a creator fund. So there you get paid for your views, okay? But TikTok doesn't give that to the rest of the world. They only give it to those countries that I mentioned now. So those countries have got full access to the full beans version of TikTok and the way that you can make money on TikTok. So what you're seeing in South Africa, and I see a lot of people calling South African content creators beggars, because that's essentially the only way that you can make money is to sit there and beg for people to give you, sit on a live stream and then people must chuck cowboy hats at you and hearts and corgis bums and donuts and whatever. And so they're chucking these gifts at you. You can leave gifts on a video. So on the video comment section, you can give video gifts. Then you can have a subscription, which is also a load of nonsense because, now you're asking again for people to subscribe to you. Now it's a different kind of content that you have to make. Or you can work with artists or whatever, where you can like do a dance challenge or whatever. But let's say, for example, myself, I'm not going to do a dance challenge or a music challenge. I don't do lip syncing. I don't do any of that stuff. It's not adding value to my audience. So I don't like the way that TikTok has set up their way for South Africans to make money, because it's essentially you're begging for people to give you money. So you're relying solely 100% on the generosity of your audience to tip you and give you money. And then on top of that, TikTok still comes and takes a 40% cut.
I mean, yes.
So they reaping in the benefits of, so they are essentially charging you to not only use the platform and create content on the platform, but they are pocketing, they taxing you. They being like a government. They saying, here's a platform, you can use it. and we'll give you a way of making money on the platform, but we're going to tax you on that money. We're going to take 40%, a 40% cut of all the coins that you make. And then once they've taken that, it doesn't come back into South Africa. It doesn't come back to us in any way. It ends up being used to pay creators in the United States or in the UK or wherever else. So they're making huge amounts of money off the rest of the world. So it's essentially the poor are paying the rich to be on the platform. Um, and I think it's wrong. I think if TikTok wants to have this huge audience, 2 billion people using their platform, every person on the platform should be able to monetize themselves properly through views. Because monetizing through views means that once you start monetizing your views, you have to, or you kind of become held accountable for the kind of content that you're creating. So you have to start generating content that is value driven because your audience are going to you're going to want people to watch it. Um, and whether it's funny, entertaining content or whether it's more informative, educational content, you want people to watch it as long as possible because then you make more money. So I think it will change the landscape of content creation completely in South Africa if we have access to the Creative Fund
The
as well.
Yeah, and it would just add a whole new dynamic. I don't know from a professional hunting point of view if we could ever benefit solely off of that, but I mean it definitely does. Every little bit helps. But so getting to your platform, you guys created it's what My Media Kit, right?
Yeah.
Because we've just spoken about now putting out content and all of that, and essentially from the little bit that I've dabbled in, it makes your posting across all platforms a hell of a lot easier. Can you explain to us just a little bit about what My Media Kit stands for?
Okay. So what happens? Let's go all the way back to the conversation we were having about brand deals and sponsorships. That is even on YouTube, a lot of guys will say to you, I made a video the other day, and the guy that I sort of responded to, he even said, with YouTube, one of the biggest things that a lot of the YouTubers try and get is brand deals and sponsorships for the channel, because there you then have a sustainable, you know, income coming from these brand deals and these sponsorships. And you also get to align yourself as anybody, you always want to align yourself with a specific brand because that's the brand that you enjoy using. So whether it's a rifle brand, whether it's an ammo brand, whether it's a hunting clothing brand, whether it's binoculars, maybe people like Zeiss, maybe they like Swarovski, maybe they like Vortex, whatever the case might be, or maybe it's a specific type of scope or a specific type of silencer. It doesn't matter. People will always, you've got your stuff that you enjoy. You were influenced at some point to buy it. And if you can have your channel aligned with those brands, then that's a win-win. So you get to benefit in aligning yourself with these brands. The brands pay you, or they give you free stuff, or whatever the case is, and you get to very happily promote those brands to your audience. So it's always good to have that incentive. Now, when you want to work with a brand, one of the first things that a brand is going to ask you for is they're going to ask you to, in some way, show them all of your stuff. They're going to ask you to show them all your social media accounts, how many views you've got, how big your audience is. Is your audience male? Is it female? Is it mostly South African? Is it so the brands want to see if they had to sponsor you as a PH. Let's say, for example, Vortex wanted you approached Vortex or they approached you and you wanted to enter into a brand deal with them. Now, obviously, let's say, for example, the hunting industry is predominantly male. There are a lot of females in the industry, but from a percentage perspective, I would almost guarantee that it swings more towards the male side. Now, if you had, let's say, for example, a 70% female audience and a 30% male audience, when you show that to a brand, they're going to go, yeah, you've got a lot of followers, but those followers aren't the right kind of followers.
Yeah.
So we're not, so you need to show them that value. So they'll always ask you for something called a media kit. That's the general, that's the standard in the industry, or in the creator influencer space is a media kit. So everyone should have, if you're creating content and you want to have brand deals, everyone should have a media kit. Now, what our platform does, which was a problem that I was experiencing, where the way that we used to do media kits is it's either a PDF document of some kind, maybe you create it on Canva or Word or whatever wherever you're creating it. I always used to create mine on Canva. Now, the problem with uh, an old type of media kit is if you're posting a lot of content and you're growing quite quickly, you now have to go and update your media kit all the time. Every time you want to send your media kit to someone, you have to go and have a look. Okay, how many followers have I now got on TikTok? How many views have I got? Let me calculate my engagement rates. You have to do all of this stuff and you have to manually sit there and calculate and do maths, and not everyone wants to do that. Not everyone knows how to do that. Not everyone knows what brands want to see. So we decided to create a platform that does that automatically for you. So all you have to do is, once you have a account on the platform, you link all your socials, and then once all your socials are linked, then if a brand, now you want to work with Vortex, Vortex says, can you show us your media kit? Can you send us your media kit? How much you charge for videos, whatever your offering is. You say, sure. Then you generate a link. At the top, there's that button that says share. You click share, and it gives you a link. And then you can say, okay, that link is valid for a month or for 2 weeks. You send that to Vortex, and then the PR marketing person at Vortex is going to look at that. And when they open it, they're going to see exactly what you can see on your dashboard. And every day it updates. So if you post a hunting video this afternoon and tonight it blows up and you get 2 million views and you gain another 2,000 followers or 3,000 followers and your engagement rate goes up, it updates on the platform. So then when Vortex opens it tomorrow or the day after, you haven't had to do anything. It's just there. It's automatically updated. So it saves you as a creator, it saves you time. It gives you, that time back, because that's the biggest thing, is you're spending so much time doing all this
Yeah.
stuff. You don't now also want to go and have to sit and create a media kit. You want to focus on the things that are actually bringing the brands in, which is the content creation. So what our platform does is it takes that hassle out of your hands, so you can just focus on creating content and we'll do the rest. And we've got a lot of new features that we've got planned for the rest of the year. And yeah, so that's essentially what it is. It doesn't necessarily help you with posting across platforms. We don't post for you or anything like that. It does give you a unique perspective on your stats, so you can see a broader picture of what's going on with your social media, which does help you. You can see, oh, my TikTok is actually doing really well right now. Let me post more on TikTok, or my YouTube is probably doing better, or you can see, okay, my audience is majority male, which is good. I'm in the hunting space, but the majority of my male audience is coming from YouTube. Let me focus on that. So because you can see it
So
across all your different platforms, you'll see there's the different tabs. It says overview, TikTok, Instagram. So you can go to each of them and it will give you a unique view for that specific platform.
in your experience with this so far, have there been, I'm talking more now South African industry based, has there been more
Mm.
a preference from brands that they would rather want to work with if you've got a more of an Instagram following or more of a YouTube following? Was it generally a bit the bigger picture?
Um, it depends. It really depends. Hey? The more you have, the better, obviously. It also depends on what, like let's say, for example, TikTok. TikTok's a very it's a very fast-paced platform. It's moving very quickly. So content is constantly being generated, thrown out. It's kind of like where everyone goes to get their daily news, and so like it's moving forward very quickly. So if a brand wants exposure right now, quickly to jump on something that is happening right now, then they can jump on it and they can move with it. If they can find an influencer or a person quick enough to work with, they can move with that person. And then once the hype is sort of worn off and died down, then they can, exit it. Whereas if they want to look at a broader picture, more long term, then they're obviously going to look at you and they're going to say, okay, what can you offer us on TikTok? What can you offer us on Instagram? What can you offer us on YouTube? What kind of content are you creating across the board? Can we partner with you long term? Because there's a long term return on the different platforms. So maybe 1 month they might, your TikTok is popping off, it's going crazy, you're just doing well. Or 1 week your videos are just flying, and but then it dies off, and then maybe the next week your Instagram starts doing better. So it just depends on what goal brands want to achieve when it comes to the long term or the short term
Yeah.
needs of their brand.
Because for us it's been a bit of a difficult road, because obviously with TikTok being, I mean, yes, when I started out, I was putting kill shots on and all this sort of stuff, and TikTok just
Yeah,
banned it one after another. So you had to shift your focus on what you posted on that specific platform compared to what I would post
yeah.
on X, for instance. But
Mm,
the reason why I asked is because Mark Zuckerberg, we must release that statement now that they're going to more community notes type thing, more like a X vibe. And for me, a lot of my clientele as a professional hunter is more based, because they're from the older generation, on Facebook. So for me, that was like a
mm,
massive win for us in the industry, because now there's a lot more freedom of speech. There's a lot more of us to completely express ourselves with kill shots and all that sort of stuff, because now the
yeah.
community is going to guide it along the way. So yeah, I
Mm.
was just curious to see if brands prefer to follow a more specific platform, based on sort of regulations. Like, because I mean, let's face it, TikTok's a lot more liberal than what X is going to be, if that makes sense.
Yeah, you know, I've seen people on TikTok. You can just say that it contains sensitive content, and
Yeah.
then it'll block out, you'll have to acknowledge that you want to watch the sensitive content. So I've seen people put still shots in that on TikTok. So you just have to use the tools that are available to you. Yes, TikTok is maybe a little bit more, which is good. It's good that they are, as a platform, a little bit more strict when it comes to community guidelines, because certain spaces or certain people feel that the other platforms are not safe spaces for them because the comment sections are very rude. And whereas on TikTok you can set the filters on TikTok filter out a lot of the riffraff for you, which is great. I enjoy that. So, but when someone like Mark Zuckerberg or whoever comes forward and says, we're going to shift the focus of the platform in terms of what we allow and what we don't allow, at the end of the day, it really doesn't matter what these guys say, because the power of the audience is so much greater. So if people want to watch what they want to watch, they're going to watch what they want to watch. And if your platform doesn't allow that, they're going to find another platform that does. So yeah, Instagram is always going to is kind of found its stride. Facebook has kind of found its stride. TikTok has found its stride. X has found its stride. So you kind of just have to put your content out across the board, And I wouldn't really worry about what those platforms do and don't allow. As long as you're not really breaking the guidelines.
Mm.
If TikTok allows you to post a kill shot, and all you have to do is just specify that specific content contains sensitive content, and then it will blur it, and then people have to acknowledge and say, yes, I'm okay watching this. Do it. Don't let that stop you from using that platform for that specific content. Unless they really banned it.
Yeah. Shit, Brenden, I've had such a fun time chatting to you, but I wanted to find out as content creating in South Africa. I know we still a long way away from it being perfect, but do you think there's a massive future for it?
Huge. I mean, the mere fact that we are so far behind, we've got so much to catch up on, and there's a gap. You can see it in the content creation and the content creators. The people are not creating enough content, and we're not utilizing the concept of content creation in every single industry to its maximum. There's a huge gap for it. I'd say in your industry, it's one of the perfect industries to be in because you have the unique opportunity to create a ton of content. And I always say to people, if you start creating content, a lot of content, start with TikTok because it's the easiest to start on, and you can get an audience very quickly, and you can
Yeah.
just put content out there and don't care about what people say, don't care about comment sections, just leave it, post, move on. um you will, within 6 months, you'll have a name for yourself. Within a year, you'll be the person that everybody refers to. Guarantee. Like, I can guarantee, if you start as a PH and you post like whatever, like go take whoever's the person that's posting and has the biggest following or the most renowned person in the hunting space in South Africa. If you can post more than them, and you can post a wider variety of content than them, within 6 months, you'll be at the same level as them. Within a year, you'll overtake them, and you'll be the person that everybody speaks about. And you'll be the person that everybody says the gear that he uses, the approach that he uses, whatever, he's the person to watch. Within a year, I can promise you that will happen.
You're very passionate about this, and I love it because
Yeah.
it's something. It's a
No, dude, I
space that
mean,
I've.
yeah,
No,
yeah.
sorry, go for it.
I mean, I started realistically. Things really started for me in April last year. So I've still got a couple months until my full year has come around. Yet everybody is wanting to speak to me about this specific topic because I've put myself out there as the person that understands this. So if you do the same thing for your industry, I can guarantee within a year you'll be the person that everybody wants to come to talk to and hunt with and whatever the case is.
Oh, my next question was going to be, what's your advice to somebody that wants to start out? But you've nailed it, and you don't need all the fancy equipment. You just need your cell phone.
Most of us have
It's
got nice phones. Headphones are fine. You don't have to have that thing that you've got in front of you there. You don't have to have any of it. You can just start with what you've got and just go and go and go, because initially people are going to gravitate towards you because it's you and it's what you're saying.
yeah,
Once you start getting to a point where the look of some things really starts becoming an issue, then then you can start faffing about cameras and microphones. And if a company comes to you and says to you, we want to sponsor you, and we're going to give you a couple, 100,000 bucks or something like that. Take that and invest it into a decent camera and a microphone. Don't go and blow it on nonsense. If you really want to do content creation, then upgrade your gear. um and you don't have to wait for brands and companies to approach you, or for people to. You came to me, asked me if I want to do a podcast with you. Do it. Uh, Take you've got my media kit now. I'll help you with the Instagram, Facebook is a problem, but it's not a platform problem on our end. It is generally difficult. Like there's a lot of
Yeah.
regulations that we have to get around to make it possible to link Instagram. So I can guarantee I know where the problem is. It's on your Instagram. You haven't linked your Facebook account properly to your Instagram. So the
Yeah.
permissions are not, we're not getting the correct permission. So our platform can't link to your Instagram. But once you've got, if this podcast is, if there's someone listening to this that's a content creator and wants to start doing brand deals, sign up for the platform, start creating content, or create content first, please, and then sign up for the platform. So at least you're doing the first thing correctly.
Yeah.
And then shotgun, shotgun your email out to people. Just line up a bunch of emails. Hi, to whom it may concern, PR manager of Kimber or Vortex or whatever, content creator here in South Africa, would love to work with you guys. Here's my media kit. Here's my whatever. Send it. Just do it.
Brenden,
What have
it's
you
been
got to
an
lose?
absolute pleasure. Yeah, well, that's the thing. You've got absolutely nothing to lose and everything to gain if you do it properly, you know. But it's been, but I can't thank you enough. This podcast has been long overdue, and I think I've struggled to not find, but I've struggled to have somebody on here that has spoken about social media as passionately and as enthusiastically as
Yeah,
what you have. And I can't thank you enough for clearing the air and making things seem a lot easier than what they really are. But also,
yeah,
at the end of the day, we've got to we've got to highlight the importance of it, but also how
yeah,
fun it can really be. And a lot of people deflect from that. You know, they always think it's hard
yeah.
work and it's
I'll
all
say
this
it's not
time.
easy. That's the one thing. It's not easy, but it's a lot easier if you are just creating content.
Yeah.
If you just get that out the way, then the rest of it is a lot easier. It's definitely not easy. It is hard to get into this, to create content every day. But if you can get yourself into the habit of and over the stumbling block of just creating content no matter what, then the rest of it becomes easy and fun.
I can't wait to have you on the podcast again. I hope you'll take me up
Happily,
on that
any
offer
day.
because we've got so many things to chat about, but I know time is
Yeah,
of the issue. But yeah,
our
once again for
blessings. Yeah.
myself, I just want to say thank you and yeah, shot, but it was awesome.
No, absolute pleasure. Thanks so much, Dylan. I really appreciate you having me on here.